So first of all of you know that leaf is the most important part of the plant, isn't it? So plants are known for their greenery, right? The green color of the plant is a characteristic of it, right? And that green color of the plant itself is imparted by the leaves. It is the leaves of the plant which are the most important. Why I say so is because the leaves possess the green color pigment, that is chlorophyll, and the chlorophyll remains inside a specialized cell organelle, that is chloroplast, right? And because of that, the chloroplast would now act as the site for photosynthesis, right? All of you know that plants are autotrophic and they can manufacture their food by themselves, and that happens due to photosynthesis, right? So leaves are the site for photosynthesis, hence they are the most important. Alright, so let us first discuss a few important characteristics of the leaf. First, leaves are dissimilar lateral flattened outgrowth of the stem. Alright, they are dissimilar. Alright, that is, they are not always alike, right? So they are dissimilar lateral flattened outgrowth of the stem. It is exogenous in origin, alright? In root and in stem, I have already marked you the difference between endogenous structures and exogenous structures, right? Exogenous means something that would be originating from outside, not very much from the internal layer or internal to the body of the plant it would be growing. So leaves are exogenous. Okay, there will be next. It arises from node and possesses a bud at its axil. Obviously, this is also very commonly told to you so many times that yes, leaves would arise from the node and would possess a bud called axillary bud, which will arise from the axil of the leaf, right? Next, it possesses chlorophyll, that is the green color pigment, and performs photosynthesis. Alright? Next, it possesses stomata. Now, stomata are these minute pores that are present on the lamina of the leaf. These minute pores are going to allow exchange of gases. Alright, in the plant body also the exchange of gases would be very much required, and that would be occurring via stomata, and the stomata would be present mainly in the leaves. Next, it is the major seat for transpiration. Now, transpiration is also a very important phenomena that occurs in the plant body, and transpiration means the loss of water from the plant body in the form of water vapor. Alright, so this transpiration would also be occurring via stomata. Alright, like you have seen in stem modifications, phylloclade, isn't it? So phylloclade were certain specialized stems which will perform photosynthesis, and in them the leaves will be short-lived. Why? So that the leaves, if present, would possess stomata, and if there will be stomata, there will be transpiration or loss of water, which this kind of plant, which will grow in extreme dry habitat where already water is so much in scarcity, cannot afford to lose. Alright, so that's why to prevent or to reduce transpiration, such plants would not possess leaves at all. Rather, they would allow their stems, or they will specialize their stems to perform photosynthesis. Alright, so these are a few important characteristics of leaf. Next, let us learn about the structure of leaf. So now, let us discuss the structure of leaf. Alright. Now, look at the diagram. Here, you can find that mainly the leaf can be divided into three parts. Okay. Let me show you here in a more simpler way. Suppose this is the node. Okay. And as you know already, that leaves will arise from the node of the stem, right? So in that case, the leaves in the higher plants would mostly possess three parts as such. One part is the point of attachment of the leaf with the node. Okay. This point of attachment is called leaf base. leaf base or hypopodium. Alright, so this is one part of the leaf. Then comes the stalk of the leaf. Okay, the stalk of the leaf is going to be called as petiole. Petiole or mesopodium. Alright. Finally comes the main or the conspicuous part of the leaf, that is the lamina, or we can also call it the leaf blade, but technically we call it the epipodium. Okay, so epipodium, mesopodium and hypopodium, or else lamina, petiole or leaf base. So these are the three main parts of the leaf. Alright, all of you have understood this? Fine. Now look at this diagram. Here we have gone into detailed structures present in the leaf. Say, looking at the lamina, if we start with the lamina of the leaf is the most conspicuous and the green part of the leaf where photosynthesis actually takes place. Alright. So this being the outline of the lamina, right? The outline of the lamina is known as margin. It's known as margin. And also, if you can see properly here, that in the lamina there are many veins and veinlets. This branch structures that are present, these are veins and veinlets which are present, right? So in all the veins and veinlets, there is one most prominent vein that is running from the middle, isn't it? As if it is dividing the lamina into two equal halves. So this vein that is running in the middle is the most prominent and we call it the midrib. So outline is the margin and in between the vein that's present, which is the most prominent, is called midrib. From the midrib arises many more veins and veinlets. Now these veins and veinlets will provide strength or rigidity to the lamina. Also they will possess vascular bundles, and because they will possess vascular bundles, that's why they would be allowing transport of water and minerals or transport of ready-made food. Alright. Also, one very important thing is that the lamina of the leaf would also possess minute pore-like structures called stomata, and already all of you know that stomata acts as the site for transpiration and gaseous exchange in plants, right? So now let us see the main points regarding the lamina. So lamina or epipodium, remember that, alright? So first, it is green and expanded part of the leaf, most expanded part of the leaf. It possesses veins and veinlets which contains vascular bundles. Next, the most prominent vein present in middle is the midrib. Then on the basis of the lamina now, leaf can be of two types. Now this is very, very important. See, looking at the lamina, we can differentiate the leaves into two categories. In certain of the plants, mostly in the dicots, remember this, mostly in the dicots, the lamina, see, the lamina has two surfaces, right? The upper surface and the lower surface. Upper surface is called adaxial surface. Mark the spelling here, adaxial. Adaxial surface or upper surface. And abaxial surface or lower surface. Alright. So the lamina has two surfaces, upper surface and lower surface, right? So in dicots mostly we can see that the upper and the lower surfaces are not similar. They are dissimilar. Now how are they dissimilar? They are dissimilar by two main points. First, in dicots the upper surface has less number of stomata and it is more green in color. Less stomata and more green in the upper surface. And in the lower surface, of course, then it will have more number of stomata and it will be lesser green in color. So upper and lower surfaces are then distinct. They are completely different, right? Appearance wise, the upper surface being more green in color, lower surface being less green. Upper surface has less number of stomata and lower surface has more number of stomata, isn't it? So in that case, such a leaf where upper and lower surfaces of the lamina are dissimilar, we call it dorsiventral leaf. Dorsiventral leaf. So it's mostly found in the dicots. Alright. Now, coming to the other category or other type of leaf. Isobilateral leaf. In isobilateral leaf, the upper and the lower surfaces of the lamina would be exactly similar. Means they will be equally green and also they will be possessing equal number of stomata. It's mostly found in the monocots. So on the basis of the lamina itself, we can differentiate the leaves into two categories. One is dorsiventral, that is distinct upper and lower surface, means dissimilar, and isobilateral, similar upper and lower surface. Alright. Now moving to the next part of the leaf, that is petiole or mesopodium. Mesopodium. Alright. Now see. First thing about mesopodium or about the petiole. The petiole is the stalk of the leaf. It is the stalk of the leaf. And it holds the lamina in an upward position. Okay? In a position where it can gain maximum sunlight or it can get maximum exposure. Alright? That's what mainly the task of petiole is. It is to hold the lamina in an upper position from the stem so that it can gain maximum exposure. Also, apart from that, the petiole has another function as well, that is the petiole being flexible. It will allow the leaf to flutter with the wind. It will allow the leaf to keep moving with the wind. And because it will keep moving with the wind, fresh air will be continuously supplied near the surface of the lamina, and that will have a cooling effect on the leaves. Because leaves are continuously, exposed to sun, they should also have a cooling effect that is provided due to the fluttering of the leaves. And the fluttering is provided due to the flexibility of the petiole. Alright. Now, for a very, very important term here again. See, not all the types of leaves would possess petiole. Okay. Certain leaves, mostly in the higher plants, would possess petiole, but the lower plants like pteridophytes, they will not possess petiole. So in that case, a leaf which possesses petiole will be known as petiolated leaf. Alright. And in case the leaf do not possess a petiole, then we will call it sessile leaf. Alright. Mark the spellings from here. Try to understand. Meaning is otherwise very simple. Leaf with petiole is petiolated. Without petiole is sessile. Alright. So finally let us read the points as well once then. Petiole. It is the stalk of the leaf which holds the lamina upright so it receives optimum light, and its flexibility allows the leaf to flutter, providing cooling effect. Alright. Now finally, moving to the third and the last part of the leaf, that is leaf base or hypopode. Alright. See, the leaf base is the point of attachment of the leaf with the node. The point of attachment of the leaf with the node is known as leaf base. Now of course you cannot be distinguishing the leaf base from the petiole. We cannot just simply say that this much is the, like say here in this diagram, it's suppose this is the node, right? This is the point of attachment, so this is the leaf base. And then directly starts the petiole. We have no specific boundary here that this much portion is the leaf base and then this portion is the petiole. No, you cannot differentiate between leaf base and petiole. Alright, but then we basically mark the point of attachment to be leaf base. Understood? It is not distinguishable from the petiole. So now, regarding leaf base, there are certain important points that you need to learn. That is, in the leaf base, and at the axil of the leaf remains a bud, and that is the axillary bud that you have learned so many times so far. Another thing, in certain leaves, not all, okay, two lateral appendages might be present at the leaf base of certain leaves. These lateral appendages are known as stipules. See, stipules. You remember, it may be present, it may not be present. Fine. So if a leaf possesses stipule at its leaf base, we call it stipulated leaf. Stipulated leaf. Or else we will call it exstipulated. Means, if in case the stipules are absent, we will call it exstipulated leaf. So now, also there are certain spatial conditions associated with the leaf base. Sometimes in grass we can see that the leaf base, it expands and forms a sheet-like structure. This sheet-like structure, it might partially or sometimes fully cover the node or the stem. Okay, so like this, it will look like this. Suppose this is the node, but the leaf base, it covers completely, it covers or it holds the node. It encircularizes the node and it will be expanding and covering the stem, and it will arise out like this. So when the leaf base will expand out and form a sheet-like structure covering the stem, then we will call it sheathing leaf base. Sheathing leaf base. Usually found in grass. Likewise, sometimes the leaf base might be swollen. Okay. Swollen leaf base, then comes the petiole and then the lamina. If the leaf base is swollen, then swollen leaf base is called pulvinous. It is found in touch-me-not plant, which is the scientific name being Mimosa pudica. Mimosa pudica. And if you remember, in touch-me-not plant, if you touch the lamina, as soon as you touch it, it will start to close, isn't it? As if it is showing sleep and shock movement, right? This opening and closing of leaf according to the touch stimulus is brought about by this swollen leaf base. So if this swollen leaf base wouldn't have been there, the sleep and shock movement of the touch-me-not plant or Mimosa pudica could not have occurred, right? So sheathing leaf base and pulvinous leaf base. Alright, so this is all about the structure of leaf. Everything has been discussed and I hope all of you are clear about it. So next we'll discuss phyllotaxy. Now let us discuss phyllotaxy. So first of all, phyllotaxy means the arrangement of leaves in the stem or its branches. Alright, see, the arrangement of leaves on the stem or its branches is called phyllotaxy. So this arrangement of leaves on the stem can be of three types. Okay, it can be of three types. First is alternate or spiral phyllotaxy. See, in alternate or spiral phyllotaxy, this being the stem with nodes, see, if suppose this is the first node, this is the second, this is the third, right? So look at the pattern, how the leaves are arising. From the first node, if the leaf is arising in this direction, from the second node, the leaf is arising in the opposite direction, right? That means the leaves arising from two adjacent nodes, they are going to be in opposite direction. And also, another important thing to mark is that one node is giving rise to only one leaf. So two things you have to remember. First, that one node gives rise to only one leaf. Another is that the leaves arising from two adjacent nodes would be opposite to one another. Alright, so these are the two important things to mark. Another thing, why is it called alternate or spiral? Alternate, it's very obvious because here the leaves are arranged in alternate manner. But then why is spiral? Now, suppose if you are trying to see the plant from this angle, this being your eyes. Okay. If suppose you are trying to look at the plant from this direction, what will you see? The leaves are arranged in alternate manner. So in that case, won't you see that the leaves are arranged like a spiral? From the top view, on the leaves which are arranged now in the alternate manner, won't it look like a spiral arrangement? Right? From the top view, because the leaves would look like spirally arranged. That's why we also call it spiral phyllotaxy. Is that clear? Example would be China rose, which is also known as shoe flower. Then there will be mustard and sunflower. Alright. Next, opposite phyllotaxy. Now, in general, opposite phyllotaxy means this. Means from one node, two leaves will arise. Here from one node only one leaf arises. So in opposite phyllotaxy, one node gives rise to two leaves. Okay. So that's the main definition of opposite phyllotaxy. But then opposite phyllotaxy again can be of two types: opposite superposed and opposite decussate. Now what is opposite superposed? See, here each node is giving rise to two leaves, right? So these leaves that are arising, they are arising parallel to one another in the same plane. The leaves arising from two adjacent nodes, they are in the same plane, isn't it? They are parallel to one another. As if you try to see from the top view of the plant, you will find that there are only two rows of leaves formed, and the leaves will superimpose on one another. Okay, giving rise to only two rows of leaves. So that's why we call it opposite and superposed. Opposite, why? Because there are two leaves arising from single node, and leaves arising from adjacent nodes, they will be superimposing on one another and will remain parallel to one another in the same plane. Alright? Fine. Example is commonly known as jamun. Alright? Next, opposite decussate. In opposite decussate, again, two leaves are arising from each node, but then this time, if from node 1, the leaves are in this angle, in that case from node 2, the leaves will be perpendicular like this. If suppose in node 1 the leaves are like this, so in node 2 the leaves will be like this. Again node 3 it will be like this, node 4 it will be like this. So likewise they will be perpendicular to one another. So in that case, from the top view of the plant, you can get to see not two rows, rather here you will see 4 rows of leaves. Alright, example will be Calotropis, Tulsi and Guava. Alright, so do remember in this chapter morphology, examples are very, very important. If suppose you learn the whole chapter and you ignore the examples, in that case you won't be able to score marks in NEET or in entrance exam, because from morphology chapter in NEET whatever questions will be asked, they will be all example oriented. That's why you have to put a lot of importance, or you have to give a lot of importance to the examples. Okay. Finally, the third and the last category is verticillester or hold. So see, alternate phyllotaxy, one node gives rise to one leaf. Opposite, one node gives rise to two leaf. Now in verticillester or hold, a single node will give rise to more than two leaf. If a single node gives rise to more than two leaf, then the leaves will remain in the form of a hold. That means the leaves will seem to be arranged in the form of a flower, circularly arranged, keeping the node as the center. So that's why it is known as hold or verticillester phyllotaxy. So from single node, more than two leaves arising is hold or verticillester phyllotaxy. Example will be Alstonia and Nerium. Alright. So that is regarding the phyllotaxy part. So that much for today's class. In the next class, we'll start with venation.